He thought I was nobody, just a quiet girl who loved him too much. He never knew I was the hidden heiress of $1 billion empire until he chose someone else. Now, after losing everything, breaking into pieces, and rising from the ruins, I'm coming back, not for revenge, but for truth. And the truth will destroy everything he thinks he knows. I never planned to hide my identity, but sometimes the world punishes you for simply being born into power, and I wanted, just once, to be loved without a price tag. That's why when I met Adrian Hale, charming, humble, and broken in ways that mirrored the quiet ache inside me, I told him my name was Mira, not Amara Sterling, not the only daughter of Sterling Global Holdings, not the heiress whose face was plastered across business magazines. No, I was just Mira, a girl who found solace in the shadows, and for a while, it felt like enough, more than enough, until his ambition became louder than his love, until the world I hid from pushed its way between us, until I realized that in loving him as Mira, I had doomed myself as Amara. It began the night I chose him over my own empire. My father had just suffered a near-fatal heart attack, and the board demanded I return home, take control, reclaim the collapsing legacy. But I refused, because Adrian needed me. He had lost his job, his home was on the verge of foreclosure, and he looked at me like I was the only steady thing he had left. But one evening, the sky heavy with rain, I walked into his apartment to surprise him with a small birthday cake, only to freeze as I heard him speaking on the phone. At first, I thought he was talking to a recruiter, maybe a friend, but then I heard the words that sliced me open. I can't keep doing this with her. She's sweet, yeah, but she has nothing, not really, and I need stability. Sandra can give me that. Her father owns a chain of hospitals, and she's already talking to him about getting me a position. With Mira, I'm just surviving. I felt something inside me collapse, slowly, quietly, like a dying flame. I didn't even confront him. I just walked out into the rain, feeling the world wash away whatever pieces of myself I thought were left. I disappeared from his life the next day without explanation, blocking his number, leaving his world exactly as empty as he believed mine to be. The heartbreak almost killed me, quite literally, because when I returned to the Sterling estate, my father was dying, my company falling apart, my board manipulated by vultures waiting for me to crumble. And for weeks, I barely slept, barely breathed, barely existed, until one night I overheard the doctors telling my mother that my father had only days left unless we made some extreme decisions. And that's when something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in resolve. I had loved a man enough to lose everything, but now I would love my family enough to rise above it all. I stepped into the boardroom the next morning, wearing a power suit I hadn't touched in years, the air still thick with the scent of betrayal from the night before, and everyone froze. They expected the fragile, heartbroken girl who had vanished from the corporate world, but what they got was the heiress they spent years underestimating. With a voice steady enough to silence thunder, I took control. Restructured divisions, exposed internal fraud, fired corrupt executives, brought back loyal veterans, and within months, Sterling Holdings was not only revived, but expanding. The media called it the miracle rebirth, but they didn't know the truth. I wasn't reborn, I was reforged, sharper, colder, and painfully aware of the cost of trusting the wrong person. But the universe, strange and cruel as it is, wasn't done with me. Because one day, while reviewing a new acquisition proposal, I froze. The hospital chain requesting partnership belonged to Sandra's father, the same woman Adrian left me for. And attached to the proposal was a resume. Adrian. He was applying to be project director. Fate was laughing in my face. Part of me wanted to reject the proposal outright, bury the chain financially, destroy anything connected to the person who shattered me. But another part, quieter, wiser, wanted something else. Not revenge, not victory, but closure. So I approved the meeting request, but under a different pretext. I would be there not as Mira the nobody, but as Amara Sterling, the billionaire heiress he chose not to love. The day of the meeting, I entered the room with the calmness of a storm minutes before destroying a coastline. Adrian was seated at the far end of the table, flipping nervously through documents, and when he finally looked up, his face drained of color so quickly I thought he might faint. I watched recognition dawn in his eyes, watched shock twist into disbelief, watched guilt battle with confusion. "Mira," he whispered, but the room fell fully silent when I answered, "It's Amara, Amara Sterling." He looked like the ground had just opened beneath him. Sandra, who accompanied him, was visibly shaken, her fake confidence melting as she realized the woman her boyfriend dismissed as a girl with nothing was the very heiress whose signature could determine their future. I didn't smirk, didn't glare, didn't show a drop of the pain I once carried, because I had outgrown the version of myself who bled for his words. Instead, I conducted the meeting with professional precision, never acknowledging the storm raging in his eyes, the way he stared at me as if begging for the past to rewrite itself. When it ended, I stood to leave, but Adrian rushed after me, grabbing my wrist like he had any right to touch me. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you just disappear?" he demanded, voice cracking with something I refused to name. I pulled my arm back gently but firmly. "Because you made your choice," I said, meeting his gaze with ice. He tried to say something, but Sandra stormed out, calling him a liar, accusing him of hiding how close we had been. And the whole scene felt like poetic justice, but not satisfying, because there was no joy in watching the person you once loved fall apart. Days passed, the deal moved forward, and Adrian kept trying to reach me. Emails, messages, voicemails filled with apologies, confessions, pleas for forgiveness. I ignored them all, not out of cruelty, but because reopening old wounds wouldn't heal them. But fate intervened again when Sandra's father collapsed during a site inspection and was rushed into emergency surgery. The hospital's management chaos meant someone needed to step in, and despite everything, I brought in one of Sterling's top medical teams to stabilize the situation. That night, Adrian found me in the quiet corner of the waiting area, his eyes red, his voice soft when he whispered, "Why are you helping us after everything?" And for the first time, I told him the truth. Not the romanticized version, but the painful, vulnerable core of it. "Because I know what it feels like to almost lose a father," I said, "and no one deserves to feel that alone." His expression shifted in a way I hadn't expected, like he was seeing me for the first time, as both Mira and Amara, the girl he loved and the woman he lost. He confessed things then, how Sandra's promises were empty, how her family never approved of him, how he always felt lesser, how he lied to himself to feel secure, how he never stopped thinking about me, how he hated himself for choosing stability over love. It should have moved me, it should have broken me, but instead I realized something. I wasn't Mira anymore, and I wasn't the Amara who once cried herself to sleep for him. I had become a version of myself who didn't need his love to feel whole. And then came the twist I never expected. The next morning, Sandra confronted me privately, but instead of anger, she brought guilt. She confessed that months ago, she had lied to Adrian about her family's support, manipulated him into believing she could secure his future, and worst of all, she had anonymously sent him fake evidence that I was cheating on him during the period he was losing his job. She wanted him for herself and pushed him to believe I had betrayed him first, making his eventual choice easier. My world tilted, not from pain, but from the weight of understanding. Adrian hadn't just chosen ambition. He had been deceived into believing I'd already abandoned him. He had broken me, yes, but he had been broken too. I didn't tell him what Sandra confessed, not because he didn't deserve the truth, but because I didn't want him living with the guilt of knowing he destroyed something pure based on a lie. Instead, I finalized the deal, ensured the hospital chain would thrive, and quietly prepared to walk away from this chapter for good. On the day of the contract signing, Adrian approached me one last time. "If I could go back," he said, voice trembling, "I would choose you. Every version of you, every truth, every secret. I was a fool." And maybe he was, but I had grown beyond the point of needing to be chosen. I placed my pen down, looked him straight in the eyes, and said, We can't rewrite the past, Adrian, but we can respect who we became because of it. Then I walked away, not victorious, not vengeful, but free. Free from the pain, the expectations, the versions of myself I had outgrown. Weeks later, my father fully recovered, Sterling holding soared to new heights, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. And one evening, as I stood on the balcony overlooking the city, my mother wrapped an arm around me and whispered, "You gave your heart once, and you survived. Now, give it only to someone who sees your worth without your name." I realized then that the miracle in my story wasn't regaining my empire, it was reclaiming myself. And as for Adrian, he built a new life from scratch, found stability on his own terms, and maybe someday he'll heal too. But he will always remember the woman he loved as Mira and the heiress he lost as Amara Sterling.